Hello. In this piece of lesson, we're going to talk about why sine is not one-to-one and the language we need to speak mathematically. For one-to-one function, definition is whenever the inputs are different. Okay, so let me put it in one row. Whenever x1 is different, hold on, not the same, is not equal to x2, and f of x1 is not equal to f of x2. Whenever. Okay, the opposite, okay, not equal, of course, has a specific notation. We understand that. So now I'm going to try to use the words, so, right? Whenever the inputs are not the same, the output are not the same. And the opposite of it, not one-to-one. Okay, so I'm going to put a not in capital. Not one-to-one means the opposite to one-to-one, right? So whenever means always, right? Whenever x1 is not the same as x2. So the opposite would be for some x1 is not equal to x2. Okay, for some, the output f of x1 is the same of f of x2. So in some cases, so whenever, whenever x1 is not the same as x2, f of x1 is not equal to f of x2. Whenever the input are different, the output are different, and that is violated by some cases. And therefore, it is not one-to-one. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so for some x1 that's not equal to x2, f of x1 is not the same as f of x2. Now, in this example, okay, in the sine case, right, we can see x for x1 equals to pi over 6. Okay, pi over 6, the arc length pi over 6, arc length pi over 6, and arc length of 5 pi over 6, different inputs, right? And their outputs are the same, which we have one violation. We have one pair of numbers that inputs are not the same, but the output are the same. So for some x1 not equals to x2, you can see pi over 6 is obviously not the same as 5 pi over 6, but their outputs are the same, i.e., so you can say, although, right, pi over 6 is not the same as 5 pi over 6, but okay, sine of pi over 6 is equal to sine of 5 pi over 6. So we have a violation. Now you can see on the graph, we have a horizontal line, which is y equals to y equals to half, right? It crosses the curve at least once, okay? Many times actually, but we only focus on this twice, okay? It crosses the curve twice. And this illustrates that there are a pair of inputs, pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, which are different, but their respective output are the same. So this is illustrated. This illustrates that sine is not a one-to-one function. Let's look at another case. Let's look at another case that we, so I'm going to clean this up and illustrate another case, right? So once again, write down the definition, and we're going to remove these 2 points. And the next time, the point we're going to talk about is pi over 2 and 5 pi over 2. Okay, so pi over 2 and 5 pi over 2. We're going to remove that line. So this time we draw the horizontal line y equals to 1, right? You can see that it passes at least 2 points, right? One point is pi over 2, 1. And the other point is 5 pi over 2, 1, right? So we have another point here. So when we mark these 2 points, and we know its meaning, right? The input for pi over 2 and the output for that point, right? 1. And input 5 pi over 2, and these two inputs are different, 5 pi over 2, and that respective output is 1 as well. Okay, so this pair also illustrates that sine is not one-to-one. The previous example is sufficient to illustrate that it is not one-to-one. And this one, okay, so let's make it this way. Okay, for sum, right? For pi over 2 is not equal to 5 pi over 2. But sine of pi over 2 is equal to sine of 5 pi over 2, which equals to 1. That violates, right? That violates the definition of one-to-one. One-to-one definition, right? One-to-one definition says f of x1 cannot equal to is not equal to f of x2 whenever x1 is not the same as x2. Okay, so whenever this happens, okay, whenever x1 is not the same as x2, f of x1 is not the same as f of x2. And we have a case that for this pair of x1, x2, pi over 2, and pi over 6, these two inputs are not the same, but their outputs are the same. So violates this whenever. Violates only once will make it false. So it is no longer 1-to-1. So once again, mathematical truth is that if true, it has to be always true. False once, false. So this false once, okay, this false once, okay, so this false once make it false to 1-to-1 function. I hope this explanation helps. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for watching.